Hello, everyone who is watching. Basically, this is going to be quite informal, I would say, but it is still going to be posted on Redstone channels. Um, Hi, I'm Miriam. I am kind of a co-host of Redstone Reports and have been involved in several things in the past that I'm kind of have a thought about why XR UK strategy and various other things are concerning to me. Do you want to introduce yourself, fair friend?
Yep, so I'm Peach is my kind of public name. And I am I'm a member of a local XR youth group, whose like views I'm not representing here. I'm just coming to this as like my responses as an individual, but it's also kind of reflecting, I think, conversations that we've had locally about kind of XR and that sort of thing.
Great. So actually, I think we should let's start off with that. So XR Youth Cambridge and XR Cambridge and other folk from around Cambridge have recently launched the Schlumberger Out campaign. Do you want to introduce that and talk a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah, so it's a really exciting campaign, I guess. It's something that I feel really strongly about. In Cambridge, we've got a research centre for the world's premier oilfield services provider, who are super, super connected with the University of Cambridge. And as part of really mobilising against fossil fuels, we have decided to try and get them kicked out of Cambridge to get their kind of all these ties with the university cut, as hopefully part of sort of taking away that social legitimacy. And our third demand of the campaign is for climate reparations. So we're really making an effort as the youth and sort of non-youth local groups to learn about reparations, to learn about what that means to the affected communities, and to try and push for that and like acknowledge the harm that's been done by fossil fuel extraction.
That is incredible. I didn't actually know that, so thank you for educating me. I read some of the infographics on Instagram, and I must have just not looked very carefully. I think that's an incredible uh, perspective to come. Well, I think that's it's an incredible kind of um, thing to focus on in this kind of climate, because obviously we know how colonial violence has basically caused a climate crisis in a roundabout way. It's so important that we focus on that. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like who Schlumberger are and like why they're a bit sinister, more sinister, or
They're extremely sinister. So one of the, I think, really creepy things about them is they are like, most people don't know anything about them, who they are, what they do, because they are behind a lot of the fossil fuel companies. So they provide the research, the technology, the infrastructure for all of this destruction to happen. But because it's not their name on the petrol station, people are often unaware of like how complicit they are, and they've been on the scene of a lot of like serious um oil and gas related catastrophes. When the ocean was set on fire,
mm,
um that was in a Pemex oil field, of like, well, offshore sort of field we know Schlumberger are really active in. We don't know exactly whether like their equipment failed. There's no way for us to really find that out, but like they're on the scene where we see a lot of these things. The other thing that's really kind of disturbing about them, they are registered in a tax haven. Um, However, they, at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when when we were all losing our jobs and people were sort of scrambling, panicking to work out how they're going to feed their kids and stuff like this, the UK government gave Schlumberger 415 million pounds in COVID bailouts. Like, if you think about what that would have meant to like your family at this time, like I think we can all remember like just the sheer panic for most of us. And
yeah.
like, I was working as a cleaner, like it really fucked me over, quite frankly. And like, that makes me so angry that the UK government is just like subsidizing it, but they don't even pay tax. They don't even pay back in this country, never mind the countries that are absolutely like havoc is being wreaked there by the climate crisis and just extraction.
Yeah, right. That is a really good, I think that sets a really good tone for the rest of this conversation because, so, well, whether you want to explain or I'm happy to kind of summarize what I've seen, because I would also just like to add, I haven't been involved either in the kind of research that goes into the campaign, but also and obviously it's a joint effort and security cautious. I just want to say that people watching this, just because we're talking about it doesn't mean we're actually directly involved in any of the doing of the things, although we may also be. So yeah, I saw the other day some interactions on channels about how XR Youth Cambridge were being, or XR, well, the coalition group of the campaign were being basically being held to a very unusual standard that I think is quite sinister as well, that basically our actions weren't accountable. Do you want to talk a little bit about the accountability phenomenon?
Yeah, so I think basically what happened was the sort of group, just like involved with coordinating that campaign, and it includes people, from people sort of directly taking action to people doing media and messaging and all of this kind of stuff, were contacted by XR UK, Action Circle. Well, so firstly, UK M&M were like, we're not gonna retweet anything about this campaign. And then Action Circle got in touch with us and said, well, these actions were unaccountable. So what happened? Some people, lots of people actually, like a huge amount of people were mobilized to go out doing a range of, town decoration, shall we call it, from fly posting to throwing paint and stenciling. So it's kind of all a similar thing, this idea of like, making our mark, that I think really exists on a spectrum from sort of fly posting all the way up to more kind of dramatic things. But that was a problem apparently for XR UK, who phoned us and said, oh, you can't do this, don't do this anymore. So that was like something. I'm just going to tell you now about like what my personal like emotional response to that is, which is like, so yeah, I wasn't personally involved in these particular actions, but I have like a serious level of police trauma. And for someone to phone and say like, I'm upset that you didn't get arrested, like everything else around accountability aside, for me, that sounds like I want you to suffer. I want you to feel pain. For me, like getting arrested is it's something I do in situations where I feel like it's the right thing. Like you've seen me locked on to various things. Like I'm not someone who is not going to get arrested, despite the extreme, like my heartbeat is going now, thinking about arrest. And I still do it, and I'm still fine to do it when I feel like it's the right thing tactically for an actor. Like for someone to call and be like, well, we wish you'd got arrested, that makes me so angry. That feels violent to me. It feels extremely violent. And that's so yeah, I'm really struggling emotionally to know that I'm in a movement with people who wish harm on me and my comrades. And that is really, really difficult to deal with emotionally, actually. It feels violent.
Yeah, I completely see where you're coming from there, because as you pointed out to me in the past, and actually I would say you've been someone I have learned so much from in terms of considering that my experience as a white able-bodied cis-presenting woman is so different for various reasons. My experience with the police has often been okay, Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it's been grim, but often it's been okay. And that is not the same for everyone. That is not the, across the board. The police do not take the same approach to everyone systemically. Embedded within the police is the racist policing that was brought on. The police was established by to suppress members of the community that weren't, wealthy, kind of aristocrat sort of friends of the kind of upper ruling classes.
Mm-hmm.
And that still exists today. And when I joined XR, I didn't know any of this. I was like, right, yeah, climate and ecological emergency, bad. I had spent time at fracking sites and getting involved in different campaigns. And I did notice that I was excited to be able to get arrested. And like now, I understand that has caused potential harm to some people, that ideology of we must be held account by the British state, by the UK government, who consistently, violently suppresses certain members of our communities. Whew, yeah, it is. It's that feeling of emotion and rage, I guess, is a completely valid, I think, emotion in this circumstance. Love and rage. So with that, I guess the question is now for people who do want to get involved in direct action campaigns, like we've seen with the Palestine Action recently have helped, amongst other members of the Oldham community, shut down an arms factory in Oldham. And I've been so many times to the site in Oldham where accountability was not always necessarily, there. And that's fine. Like diversity of tactics.
Yeah.
So basically, what do you think needs to happen maybe moving forward? Or what would you like to? What would be your ideal outcome in moving forward?
I think we really need to have a conversation about what accountability means. I think that this like conceptualization of it as like accountability via state violence, a violent state force, the police, and arrest, and accountability to the government, the British government, who are like, on a basically a murderous rampage against the global majority, both like nationally in our country and around the world. Like, these people should not be deciding whether what we're doing is right or wrong. Like, they just shouldn't. They are very, very bad. I feel like most of us know that by now. So we need to have a conversation about what it means to be accountable to, as youth, our generation, to the people who are, most directly being affected by climate crisis and by extractivism. So that's, people on the sort of front lines and in those sacrifice zones. We need to talk about accountability to them, to our communities that we live in. Accountability, like it just isn't working, this idea of accountability through arrest. Sometimes it's tactically necessary, sometimes it's tactically useful, but we need to have a serious conversation about what it means to embed a weird relationship to the police in our movement and who that excludes as well. Because I really think that, like, also from what I've seen for the last couple of days coming out of XR UK media and messaging, is their response to this kind of thugs and vandals allegation being the opposite to what it should be. So instead of being like, that's classist and racist, you're using terrible language, Priti Patel, and we're not even going to engage with that paradigm. Instead, it seems like the response has been like, oh no, not us. Here's some pictures of us being incredibly white and middle class. And like, I come from a position of privilege myself as well, like on some levels, and like, it is tempting to just be like, oh no, I'm actually not like that. But like, who is that appealing to, and who is it really putting off? Like, who is seeing that and being like, oh my God, who are these people? What is wrong with them? And like, I think it plays into this paradigm that it's like so much of an advantage. So I think it's conversations is what I'm really asking for. And also I think for XR UK to approach some of this stuff with a bit more humility, quite frankly. Like I
Yeah,
feel like in I feel like in Cambridge we have created an extraordinarily resilient local group with probably one of the best relationships between youth and non-youth that I've seen anywhere, that stuck it out through a pandemic that I think has really, really caused a lot of XR local groups to shrink or stop existing, and is now coming back with a campaign. Like we had this intro talk to Schlumberger after the launch, and we had people coming from like literally around the country, you know, and coming with so much enthusiasm and excitement. It's something that I rarely feel in activism these days. I feel like a lot of it is like a drudge, and I wish that XR UK maybe spent a bit more time looking for the local groups that are finding things to energize themselves, finding ways to be resilient, and maybe try to learn a little bit from that rather than just like reinforcing this like central doctrinal approach. And that it feels like the strategy is an expression of centralization and doctrinal thinking over actually listening and recognizing that maybe sometimes the local groups might have some good things to offer the movement. I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think humility has got to be at the core. And something I just posted a video on Redstone about how, do you remember when humility was like actually kind of integral to what we did? Like, we don't have all the answers. We definitely don't have all the answers coming from a system of domination and of, you know, the enlightenment of like white supremacist thinking of like, we need to educate these savages, you know. It's like that's literally colonial isn't like what happened with like Christians and other religious groups going to discover countries that are, or discover land masses that are already like, anyway. I think what I hear in the strategy document, which we'll go into, is that same level of like, bum ba da da, XR are here and we've got all the answers. So I want to kind of move the conversation forward talking about that. So the strategy document has been published on XR anti-fascist group. Let me just find out sorry, I don't know if you can hear, I'm getting pings of notifications and might be a bit distracting. So apologies for that if you can hear it. But XR Europe Anti-Eco-Fascism and Refugee Support is a group that's been established by Matthew of Epic Tomorrows after we had a conversation about stuff. Anyway, that's the doc's been posted on there, and I've just done a quick analysis of a phrase that I saw being quite probably dangerous as a concept: groundbreaking thought leadership. It's not. It's giving. It's giving white supremacy. Like it's for me. It's, and I don't want to say that in like I'm not making light of it. I am genuinely trying to use my understanding of anthropology and of sociology, etc. in it, and I'm also being mindful of my language as well, because I've just called out the strategy doc for being inaccessible with language, which so I'm kind of trying to moderate my language as well, because I think I can communicate on a spectrum. Anyway, yeah, that phrase is really kind of giving alarm bells to me, because I'm wondering why that is being pushed, or why that's being written about as an important part of the XR moving forward, but because to me that doesn't communicate an accessible or open way of a dialogue. If XR are moving forward in the space of we have the answers, we are leaders, we are thought leaders, other groups are going to kind of look and be like, well, okay.
Are you? I mean, also, I think that it's for me, that really downplays how much learning XR has had to do from groups who basically did not owe us shit. And like, so people have had, within and outside the movement, ridiculous amounts of patience to be like, okay, guys, your heart is in the right place, but you need to do some learning and some listening. And then for XR to come out of this period, where they've been fighting alongside other people against the bill and things like that, and to be like, okay, well, anyway, we're leaders. It feels to me like not a recognition of the network, the wide web, the ecosystem maybe of different groups that there are, and how much XR owes some of those groups and the patience that they've had with like talking to individual members of XR, but also XR whatever central leadership about some of these issues, particularly I think racism, and to emerge from that period of I think a lot of learning and make a claim to like thought leadership or whatever. It feels also just I was reflecting, so my initial kind of ick was the like NGO speak of it, and then I was like, actually though, we have to like locate NGO speak in white supremacy, because actually NGOs have been historically in many cases part of neocolonialism, and like it's not just that it's like silly NGO language. It's that silly NGO language actually connects a lot into this rhetoric of like white saviorism and things like that. That's why I think there's kind of two levels that we're just like, this feels uncomfortable in my body.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. And that's how it clicked for me in a way, is that I think I've seen the campaign WTF,
WWF, yeah.
And I know a lot of work's been done, amazing work by XR youth on this campaign, and that is exactly the kind of perspective that is important in this, right? Because I hadn't even actually thought about NGOs being part of that new colonial drive, that push to kind of speak over communities that have already been protecting and helping work with in a symbiotic relationship with the natural world that's already existed for millennia in a lot of indigenous communities across the world. And it's kind of like, we why do we keep thinking that, why do white Europeans keep doing the thing of ruining everything? I genuinely, I kind of keep coming back to like why colonialism, but anyway, that we could talk about that for hours, I'm sure, as well. So we've covered the kind of Schlumberger accountability debacle, I'm going to say, and also the kind of strategy and how that is that accountability is mentioned in that strategy. And also, as we've just talked about, the phrases in the NGO speak of that. What is our role as concerned people, and as people part of local groups or youth groups or commentators or analyzers what can we do other than, obviously these
Yeah.
conversations are probably going to be useful. What's other people's role in this?
I think, I mean, yeah, I've had this thing this morning of like genuinely considering whether I can be associated or involved with XR in light of this. And like,
Me too. I've just
it's,
had that.
yeah,
Just had that.
yeah. And I know I'm not the only person. And I guess something I'm trying to like go forward remembering is that what can feel like stasis and what can feel like a final statement, because we're taught that like edicts that go out from an apparently powerful central point are therefore rules, isn't. It's actually part of a conversation. We're not in a single static point, we're part of a movement. And I can't in good conscience walk away from it, because I don't see necessarily an alternative. And I see amazing things being done, especially, by XRISN and by XR Youth Solidarity in particular. And like
Represent, unify. So
yeah,
much
unify,
appreciation.
yeah. And like, and I feel like in some ways to feel like we have to just like cut all our ties with our communities and our movements when they do things that we disagree with is actually kind of its own form of like purity culture. It's like, oh, I'm not going to be tainted by that. And so I'm trying to settle into a place where I'm like ready now to have honest conversations with people I agree with and people I disagree with about this and about what it means. And I think that's really what it is now for all of us, is like to continue in humility to try and do what we feel called to do and what we feel people who know more than us in the world, so that's people with the most direct experience of this crisis so far, are asking us, telling us that they need, and to just keep kind of fumbling without the need for purity. I think I'm trying to like push against that desire in me to like condemn someone or something. And like, obviously, some of the stuff I've said in this will probably feel quite a lot like I am condemning, I think, XR UK. And it does come from a place of like sadness and anger. But we have to have these conversations. We have to keep trying. Like, even
Thank
though it's hard.
you for saying all that, because as always, I look towards people like yourself as a friend and as a comrade to like help me make sense of things. And what you said there's really resonated with me, because I too had that like, oh, I can't be involved in this. This is just against my very being. But actually, I'm not necessarily going to be involved with it. I'm going to be the same kind of misfit of like who just roams around groups and kind of tries to be a presence of just as an ear and as a vessel for.
And as a human being as well, like we can get so caught up in the idea that like it's not a cult. None of us signed up to like some culty thing, and like we're all human beings trying to find other human beings to try and make something positive happen, and that is a complicated process.
And to find our community as well, because I actually have a lot of compassion and like empathy for the like beautiful glory golden days of XR 2019, where April we did something incredibly like amazing. Like it was there was problems and still is with the ignorance and the white saviorism and supremacy of so much of our of who we can sometimes represent in a way. However, that the feelings So my doorbell's just the feelings that I felt then was one of intense hope and optimism, because I'd found people and my friends who remain to this day, the community, that wanting to hold on to that, wanting to hold on to your friends and your loved ones, because you identify that XR has to exist in a certain way to get that community. Like, I really like, I also really connect with that in a lot of ways, and I think it's a grief process, right? It's grieving the loss of something, or an idea or a story we have of something. And so yeah, I as you said, like, I'm conscious that a lot of what acting and speaking for anger is definitely, and it's a good way to lose friends or it's a good way to alienate people that you know and love, because I do feel like I don't know how to communicate my upset or my confusion with the state of things, but just having those conversations as openly and as kindly as possible. I'm not going to apologize for my tone, because I'm not going to tone police myself or you, because I think anger and frustration is valid. You know, we can't shy away from that, right? Don't know.
You
Don't know.
gotta
I've
feel
got no answers.
somehow. No, no, and I just, maybe that's the position we have to start from with all this stuff. It's like, I don't have the answers. I just feel some things and I want to know about some other people feeling their things. And also I think we really need to have a conversation in XR at the moment about like whose feelings and thoughts are being foregrounded, and just some of this discussion of optics and stuff. It's like, I know people who have visceral responses to, like, visceral kind of anti-responses to the idea of like XR being like, I'm just going to go and get arrested, off I merrily go. Like, and they're really alienated by accountability. So I think a lot of this stuff, like, we look better, more people will like us if we're accountable. It's like, which people? So also knowing that we don't have the answers, but also maybe thinking carefully about which voices and which feelings we listen
Yeah.
to, and how our own biases can tell us that some voices are more important than others. And if we maybe flip that on its head, we might come to some different answers, I guess.
I think that I think that's it for me. That's a good starting point out of this, and maybe a good tone to set for the rest of the week, because I think there will probably there'll be some difficult conversations. I want to use this an opportunity to invite yourself and potentially other people from across the movement within XR and outside who have been involved with, to talk about the strategy document and to talk about the kind of moment that we're at the moment, on the backdrop of the policing bill and violations against the Gypsy, Roma and travel communities, and nationality and borders bill that will potentially make people of not just dual nationality, but people whose parents were born in a different country, if they're organising in the UK, they could also have their, citizenship removed. So this is scary stuff. Yeah, we've got to hold this moment for what it is, and it's, what's it, a storm in a teacup.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I just want to thank you for all the work you've been doing, and for helping educate, and not in like a patronizing way, but help shine a light on things that a lot of people don't consider. And that's something that I often, I remember I was having a conversation once and you were like, maybe I just have to like, maybe it's okay if I piss people off until they realize. And I was like, mood, okay. Because I think a lot of me, like, coming from being raised and trying to be conscientious and that sweet girl and that, not offending, it's like we are still, I mean, obviously, as a non-binary person, you can speak to your experience, but for me, I'm also like, don't want to be too loud, don't want to be too like aggressive, or I don't know, in my tone.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think also like living through the discomfort of everything. Like sometimes it's just time to have an uncomfortable conversation, and also that the uncomfortable conversation doesn't resolve things like right now. That kind of that need again, it comes from like purity culture, and it comes from immediacy culture. It comes from the idea that you can just use power to like silence people rather than trying to have meaningful conversations that are going to just be complicated for a while. It's so hard. I really struggle with it. Like, but I just want everybody to just listen to me, and then I personally think that everything would be better if they do that. And like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that like there are some things I feel really strongly
A
about,
little
and I
bit.
a little bit, but I want
No, I know you're
to.
joking, and in a way, I know your perspective is. Sorry, I interrupted you, but yeah, I know what you mean.
I just think there's some things that it need to be heard and considered, and they're not always heard and considered in XR spaces. And
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there'll basically more to come. Is the idea behind this conversation and the conversations that we're going to have throughout the rest of the week is what haven't I considered, what haven't you considered, what haven't other people considered, and listening and talking to each other with the same level of kind of critique that we need to engage in for the whole process. Is I think the thing that I'm interested in is speaking or listening to people that are concerned about the rise of ecofascism and the rise of well, authoritarianism in the UK. I think we obviously have to think about XR as it exists now. It still has influence. It still has mobilization power. So, you know, as you rightly said, now's maybe not the time to chuck in the towel, but it feels difficult. It's a difficult position to be moving on from. Right. Well, I think I'll stop recording there. But do you want to add anything just before I kind of summarize?
I think the main thing is just like just I just want to encourage everybody who has a stake in this in some way to like not do what my feelings guide me to do, which is like just burn everything and run away and never talk to people again. And like I'm just encouraged, like as much as I'm trying to encourage myself not to do that today, this week, while we're having this conversation, I would like to encourage everybody from all sides to not listen to the little burn it and run voice, I guess.
That's a really good advice. All right, thank you, Peach. It is always a joy to speak to you. And yeah, well, this will go on the Redstone YouTube channel, and this will be posted online in different spaces. I'm guessing that there'll be conversations had throughout the week that other people should get involved in and have their own. Like, this is one page, and I think everyone should definitely get involved. Okay, see you soon. Bye. Thank you so much.